I'm unmuting and the camera is on.
Okay. All right, well, one of my first official orders of business here. The first budget advisory board meeting of the year. And we do have some budget advisory board members already. Chris Kaufman, treasurer, Gabe Wojtek, clerk auditor, Bill Winfield, commissioner, and I don't believe we have anybody online. Anybody online? I don't see anybody. But we did invite Kevin Walker, but of the 7 members, we just need 4 members. Oh, there's Kevin right there. Welcome. Hey, Kevin. How's it going? Kevin, we haven't met in person yet, but Stephen Bowles, our finance officer. So you can sit anywhere. So the purpose of today's meeting is really to interview external candidates and internal candidates. And we have one internal candidate right here, AJ Throgmorton, right? Yep. Okay, and we have 2 internal candidates, and we'll go with AJ first, and you can run off, and then we'll talk to Shannon Mackwell and Tammy Holland from the airport also applied for this role, but she couldn't make it. But she is giving a response to the same interview questions that we're going to pose to these 2 gentlemen in email, so we can, and she submitted a letter of intent, which I guess kind of represents her, placeholder here for this.
And Steve, could you remind me just what the composition of the board is, like how many?
Yes, so, and actually I do have it up right here, because I thought that would be, but there are 7 members. And the 7 members are 2, well, I'll read it right here. The county auditor, county treasurer, 2 commissioners, the 1 non-elected county department head, that'd be Shan or Tammy, and then the balance will either be the finance officer and or 1 citizen. So we have 7 on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4 are already 5 are already filled, so all we need to do is pick 1 citizen and 1 department head. So today, while we're talking, AJ is a representative from the citizen, and we can pick one of the 2 department heads.
We had the potential for 2 citizens when the clerk auditor was also the budget officer. Or finance officer, depending on
Thanks.
when you're looking back.
Okay, well, actually, before we get started, I would actually like to have Gabe or anybody else just kind of describe the role that we're trying to fill, either internal or external, because I'm actually new to this board as well, so this will help me understand what this role is.
Yeah, so just in a little quick overview of the budget advisory board and its function and kind of what it looks like. We meet over the course of from early September through the end of October. And we really do a deep dive, comb through the budget. It's really the sort of closest analysis of Grand County's budget across all of its funds, expense and revenue. And that involves presentations by each department that has sort of its own budget. And so budget requests applying to the following year are presented in depth through these presentations. So it's a great sort of encapsulation of Grand County's budget line by line. That can be referred to by the public by the record that will exist on YouTube. I also think it's a great resource for commissioners who are the ultimate decision makers on the budget to refer back to those presentations that we will see if more information is sought with regards to the budget that could be contained in the presentations before the budget advisory board. This board isn't a thumbs up, thumbs down on presentations of budgets as far as those requests goes by department heads. Our job is to sort of tease out more information. And if there is, it might be that, I could see a certain scenario where if there is not enough information available to support a request, the budget advisory board might request more information for that request to be included. But otherwise there isn't, The budget advisory board doesn't make any vote approving or disapproving votes of a department, of any department's budget request. That's the job of the commission. And then ultimately, the process culminates in a recommendation and sort of an approval of a forwarding of a recommended tentative budget to be considered and approved by the county commission. That's typically on the first meeting of November, whereby the sort of budget workshops with the commission are kicked off. So I'll leave it there. Do you have any questions, AJ, about that in general?
Seems pretty clear.
And in
I would
order-
add that that tentative budget that we forward always has a lot of really big loose ends hanging that are for the commission to decide. So we kind of tee it up to give them more information and to make it easier for them to make sort of those higher level decisions on how do we deal with the budget shortfall, or what do we do with the budget surplus, or those kind of issues. But, and I would say also that, like, we're not, striking, like Gabe said, things out of people's budgets, but we work with them during their presentations, and so changes can and are made during the presentations as we, talk with them about it. May all agree that, yeah, we don't need this here, we should lower this a little bit, and
Yeah, I guess I was gonna chime in similar to Chris, in that I think. I think our practice has been for small level decisions, like how much money is needed to travel to a conference, or items well under $5,000. I think often effectively decisions are made here. Those items aren't big enough for the commission to really pay attention to. But I guess
Yeah.
if someone wanted to make a big deal out of it. But I do think one of the main tasks of the budget committee is just to formulate some options for the commission to decide on those, the biggest line items. And so, not to make the big decisions, but at least to perform them so that reasonable amount of time, the commission can, look at the list of important items.
I can appreciate that. And so my perspective, I'm new to this, but my perspective on this life cycle here is we've already started working on budget estimates with department heads. In fact, Jen is already working on it. So we're starting with budget estimates by the end of this month to have what we're going to call a proposed budget that will go into the September and October months is when the budget advisory board will meet. And ideally, this is just refined over time, and there's balancing and trade-offs and horse trading or whatever goes on during this cycle to get this budget to the tentative stage, as Chris mentioned, and I believe it's our job here to be able just to recommend this budget at the end of that cycle to go to, the commissioners for review and approval. And I agree, I like what you said, Jacques, or I mean, Kevin. We try to make all these lower level decisions, even at the department level or at the budget advisory board level. So what we're taking up is 80% there. It's just exceptions or critical things that need to be discussed.
Okay, at that November timeline, once we turn over our findings to the budget meetings, then are we involved still with the commission pretty much on the board, or is it kind of more here's our findings and head home?
Not typically as board members, but certainly, if you were interested and wanted to attend workshops. And if I could see a universe whereby the commission even would request input from a budget advisory board member during those workshops at their behest.
But I think in the past, the budget advisory board, I don't recall a meeting after we hand off that to the budget.
No, not that I recall.
not too recently. There were a couple of years where we had joint meetings where
Okay.
both bodies convened at the same meeting, but we haven't done that for a while.
All right, Alicia, did I miss anything on the official rules here? We're good? Okay.
I would just mention that we are supposed to at the first meeting do officers, but since we didn't put it on the agenda, we'll present.
That's right. I was kind of thinking that would be our first budget advisory board meeting, which would be the week of 9/2.
Okay.
And then we'll have a weekly meeting. In fact, that's something maybe we can discuss after we do the interviews, what would be a good date and time, but I think the week of 9/2 for 8 weeks. Or 9 weeks if there's depending on how many weeks we have in September and October. We'll pick a weekly budget advisory board meeting and then we'll just, we can get it on the calendar and we can pick our departments that are ready to go based on that.
And make sure on the agenda, and also with appointing officers,
That first one.
we'll approve minutes for this meeting as well as the minutes from the last budget advisory board meeting of last year. I'll have both of those prepared.
Okay,
Oh, one
Good.
more thing, should also review your bylaws at that first meeting, the new year with your new members.
okay,
And then if any changes that you want to see come forward on those bylaws, should probably be decided there and then forwarded to the commission for recommendation.
okay.
I have
Thank you.
I have a request. Can everybody get the most up-to-date bylaws and
They're posted.
resolutions?
I actually just updated on the budget advisory boards page on our website because those were the outdated ones. We put the new ones up just the other, like a couple weeks ago. But if not, I can send them to you as well. That's it.
Okay. Well, I have listed the interview questions up here because I want to keep them consistent. And these are the same list of questions that I gave to Tammy as well. So let's turn to AJ. AJ, and actually before, I think this is appropriate, before we even start asking any of the questions here, I think I'd like for everyone to hear, or actually before introductions. Let's just start. Kevin, do you want to do just a 30-second introduction, just so you know who everybody is?
Kevin Walker, I'm on the county commission.
That was about 5 seconds.
And Bill Winfield, County Commissioner, both Kevin and I were on this board last year, as I think everybody here except these two, so we're just kind of spilling over and moving forward in the next year.
Yeah, I was gonna mention. Like Bill did, I think this is my 4th year.
Yeah. We'll jump over you because you're another candidate. He is our jail commander in case you ever find yourself in jail.
Find yourself in jail, you stay in jail.
Fingers
Don't
crossed.
call me.
Gabriel Wojtek, Bryan County Clerk Auditor, have served in this role since March 2022. Served as a commissioner for 2 years prior to that and watched these meetings in that role as well. Yeah, that's all.
And Stephen Bowles, the finance officer working for Gabe. One of my primary jobs will be to manage the budget, the planning, and then actually monitoring and managing the budget in the next year.
Chris Kaufman, I'm the elected Grand County Treasurer. This is my 10th year as treasurer. I've been on the board since its inception in 2018.
And Alicia, not a member of the board, but she's the one that gets everything done around here. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I have her sitting over here, so everything falls apart.
Yeah, I should say that I've been the secretary for many years, but all the duties get delegated to the commission administration office, so I sign off on the minutes.
I won't be here all the time. I will start for this.
Okay, all right, so to get you warmed up before we get into the hard questions, why don't you give an introduction to yourself and actually go and read it into why, you just don't show up here.
Absolutely. Yep, AJ Throgmorton. I've been in Moab for a year and 8 months now. I've been coming out here for about a decade doing float trips. Really fell in love with the area. So about a year and a half ago, moved out here to start a river guiding outfitting business. It's been going really well. It was kind of my first foray into being a business owner, so got to learn a lot of lessons from that. Before that, I've been in healthcare IT for about 14 years. So worked on big, small projects for not-for-profits, corporations, pretty much runs the gamut. I was going to bring a copy of my resume, but it's pretty technical speak that might put most of us to sleep. Stephen might appreciate some of it, but I learned a lot about being in IT. We're a support activity, so making sure we're justifying every dollar that we spend. We're not really a revenue generating piece of a healthcare organization, so it's critical that we can justify every dollar we spend and that we can also show return on any of that investment, going back to the clients, to the customers and patients.
All right, well, we appreciate you coming in. So let's just go right here to the top of the question, the questions. The first question is, are you able to commit 2 to 3 hours per week, primarily for one weekly meeting, which we've already talked about. We'll pick that meeting on a specific date and time, so it's scheduled between 9:1 and 10:31.
Yep.
Okay, and actually technically, this is a 1-year role, but it could be extendable for 2 years, but you know, pick first steps first here.
I was expecting a bigger, like, annual, year-long window versus just the September to October, so.
Yeah.
Totally manageable.
Okay, actually, there's any other role outside of this first stage, really is just establishing the budget, which is the objective, okay. Okay, all right, well, this is kind of a wide open question, but describe any relevant skills, training, or experience that you have in finance, accounting, or budgeting.
Yeah, so, well, starting my own business, kind of went through the crash course of being an entrepreneur and everything that entails. I did finance it completely myself, so not leveraged, didn't have to take any loans out for that one, which kind of provided me a little flexibility. I have to do a little more what I want, but means that the penny pinching hits a little bit closer to home in that case, so definitely learned a lot there. Going back to my healthcare IT experience, I was in a number of leadership roles, contracting positions, so with that, had to make a lot of decisions on pretty large scale projects that had a huge impact to the bottom line of the organization. It goes back to kind of my opening, we really had to make sure that we were justifying every single dollar that we spent. And with that came pretty high level of specificity, so it wasn't kind of just, you know, grab a couple of quotes from different vendors and throw a dart at the wall for the one that we liked the best. And we had a pretty rigorous vetting process with each of those projects to make sure we were selecting the right solutions, the right projects that were going to benefit the organizations we were working for.
And as we go through these questions, I'm just gonna allow any follow on to any of you guys. If you have one. In your prior role as the healthcare IT, did you work for somebody or were you independent, you know, like independent consultant contractor?
So I did both. I was kind of went on off and on as a full-time employee for the organizations and then contracted as well. I was always W-2 through hiring agencies, headhunters, so
Yeah.
never actually had my own business like 1099 direct to an organization.
Yeah.
Kind of considerable barriers of entry to get into that game. A lot of the organizations already had contracts in place that were vetted and pretty solidly built, so they just go through a specific contracting company for a lot of their needs.
Right, but I would assume that in most cases you came in with a budget, even if it was for your own hours and project.
Yeah, and it was always wild to me in those contracting roles and gigs is they were pretty generous with the budgeting for them. It always seemed like they would take a specific vendor, Epic, if you remember, we were talking about Epic.
Yeah.
They would take Epic recommendations that would come in way over the top with the allotment that they would give to a given project. So we'd end up with kind of bloated and overstaffed teams. And the idea behind us as contractors was we've been doing it for various organizations. We've seen what works and what doesn't. So, you know, bringing that expertise to the table meant that, I guess, it made us look good because we could come in under budget, but at the same time, a little more scrutiny in that budget creation process would have gone a long ways for some of these organizations.
Right on. Any follow on from any of you guys on that?
Great.
All right, the next one. Why are you interested in serving on the board?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we were chatting before we got started. Well, I moved to Moab and was kind of just adventuring around town to various meetings, the trail mix meetings with Colin Topper over there. I went to a land use, county land use meeting down at City Park, you know, just kind of trying to get out and about and mix with the community. So with that, kind of decided I'd like a little bit more formal engagement on that front. I applied for the planning commission position that they've got open. Had 3 great candidates for that, myself and 2 others. And they went with one of the, excuse me, ended up going with one of the other candidates for that, so, this kind of seems like, you know, a logical next step, trying to just get involved with the community however I can.
We appreciate it. Okay, now, just kind of put on your thinking cap about what this role would entail if you were chosen here, and maybe describe some of the important considerations or aspects that you would want to understand to be able to help manage a budget for the county government.
So, in looking through 2024 budget, you know, there's definitely a lot in there. One thing I noticed, and this comes from that healthcare background and needing to justify every dollar we spend, is I see a lot of round numbers out there, and so that's the first thing that kind of triggers in my mind is, you know, a lot of 500s and thousands for things like, you know, maybe a phone bill. Somewhere where we could potentially call the service provider and say, how much it's gonna charge us for the year, you know, what's the real number that we're gonna have, and kind of write some of that specificity into the budget, into the equation. That might just be kind of my own OCD or anal nature, but it's kind of one thing that jumped out at me. At the same time, you know, I understand leaving that room at the top. It goes back to a few of those contracting projects I worked on. You know, we knew that the budgets came out and had some room over the top to kind of grow, or we were a little behind on schedule. Need to get a few more resources in. It is kind of nice to have that headroom as well. So kind of understand both sides of it and the need for each, drawing up a budget.
All right, I'm gonna throw out a situational question here. You know, it's open and ended, and it's really, there is no right or wrong answer, but it's very relevant. In fact, I've been working on the budget with department heads for a couple of weeks, and I'm kind of seeing a similar pattern here. So let's just assume you are a department head for one of the airport, library, roads or something, and you're doing your 2025 budget. And of course, you've had a bunch of years of history to base your estimate on. But now you're discovering that your costs, labor costs, material costs, supply costs are going up. You need a new roof, you need some new HVAC, or you need a bunch of other stuff, but you're developing your budget, and the guidelines are like, you need to be able to stay within your budget more or less. So just think through, if you were that department head, how would you try to plan or prepare to be able to work into next year's budget with these constraints that are sitting on your shoulder?
Is this question me that we're talking about, more or less?
What's that?
Is
Is
it
the question?
question E on there? Or did you just, is this,
No, this is just a situational question that, like, I wanted
your
to.
head's blocking question E, so that's the one question I haven't been able to read, and it's kind of killing me.
Oh, good.
You're kind of a visual learner, do well with reading, so there, I'll read it when we get to it, but, you know, we're always trying to do more with less. If I am in that department head position, I'm gonna operate under the expectation, I kind of know how things are running and that I'm pretty good at my job, so I think there are always opportunities for a little bit of penny pinching, you know, if it is something like, you're mentioning like structural repairs, you know, things to assets of that nature. You could really even weigh which are more kind of impending, which are more of a priority, and look at pushing those that you might need to. And it's kind of like the situation we've got at the city level, you know, we've got roads everywhere that really need some improvement. And kind of trying to find the ways to get funding for those as well. Like with our property tax that we just came out with at the city level, so yeah, that was a situation where we kind of went back to the well and made the pie a little bit bigger, but in addition to that, I would think that there's always ways to work a little bit more effectively, a little bit more efficiently to a given end.
Okay, before we go to the last question here, anybody have any other, like?
I wanna know how you're gonna fix the leaky roof.
A leaky roof.
Yeah, this is, it rained a lot today.
Yeah, get your rubber boots and your rubber gloves on, and we'll go walkers and get some tar.
There you go. Ask
Yeah.
for some volunteer help if we have to.
All right, well, the last question is kind of just open-ended, you know, any other information that you would like to share with us as in regard to you know, serving on the board?
Well, I've just expressed my excitement. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity even to interview for this position. I plan on being a resident of Moab, Grand County for a long time to come, so just kind of going through the planning commission interview process, you know. 3 great candidates were sitting there and we couldn't all get a spot on the board, but more will come up, so. You know, that's kind of the bright side of this whole thing is I'm gonna be involved in one way or another. If it's this formal aspect and actually chipping in here on this board, that's awesome. Happy to help. But plan on being a strong contributing member to the community for quite some time going forward.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interest.
I think we can let AJ go here.
We didn't have many questions coming back, so I mean, absolutely nailed it. What's going on?
It means there's no other applicants.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't have to try so hard.
Oh, AJ.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So as we mentioned, we got Tammy Howland as a candidate, but she's gonna reply through email, so.
We know when she's gonna do that.
Well, she's already given me the letter of intent. I have asked her to do it at the start of this meeting, and I have checked an email. I don't have anything there yet, but I don't know how official we want to be on the exact timing, but I'll paint it right after this. But she did give me an email, her letter of intent to serve, and acknowledge that I had asked her to reply to this in email by today. So I would say we'll get it through today. I know she has some security meeting or workshop today at the airport, but it was definitely a priority. All right, let's go to Shan. Again, why don't you take a few minutes, just, I think everyone knows you, but maybe to describe just what brought you here to volunteer to sit on the board.
Shan Ackwell, I'm the captain of the Grand County Sheriff's Office, and jail commander for almost 7 years. What inspired me to put into the board, this is the first time I've received an email asking if I'm interested in it. So,
And I appreciate you volunteering, coming up, and I mean, just, I call it like, you know, a 1+. Everybody has a day job, but then you volunteer for, something additional. All right, on now.
And before we dive in, is this part of our bylaws? This is the.
Oh, these were just questions that I wrote so I could stay consistent with everybody.
This list of 23 things, what's?
Oh, this is my to-do list,
Oh, okay.
and that happens to be the one.
Working document.
Okay,
This is actually how I operate. I always had that.
that's fine.
Yeah. But I love your attentions for detail. So, and I imagine too here, you wouldn't have a problem serving the 2 to 3 hours for weekly board meetings. You
No,
just- I mean, you work right
I'm
now.
able to commit. With my schedule, I can usually work it around. Obviously, I work in law enforcement, so there are emergencies that happen that.
Yeah.
Might come up, but I can't predict that. But yes, I can commit 2 to 3 hours.
We can get Alicia to go down there and take care of
I'd be good at it.
I don't know about that.
All right, well, let's go to this, just any relevant skills in accounting, finance, or budgeting, including what we're doing today.
I mean, budgeting, financing, stuff like that, like budgeting wise, I mean, I became the jail commander in 2018. I assisted with some of the budgeting stuff prior to that with the old jail commander and the sheriff, but not too much. It's kind of thrown into the mix, being like, here you go, figure it out. And I have the second largest budget in the county. Next to the sheriff, obviously. Most people just rope us all into one, but.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is working with the clerk auditor's office, asking lots of questions, learning and just, yeah. So, but my budgeting experience has been about 7 years, and so, and I've overseen the jail, plus when Steve was sheriff, I know Jameson's taking a pretty big active role. Trying to do budget stuff. When Steve was the sheriff, I kind of oversaw the sheriff's office entering all of that, getting all of that stuff in, to try and make it more clear for the budget advisory board, assist with that, because every time I showed up to the budget advisory board, my budget usually went pretty smooth, and then the other one's just a lot of questions, so I've tried to make it better for everybody, easier. Whether I was successful in that, I do not know, I guess that's up to the advisory board.
And I know you're working on your budget right now.
Yeah, so
It's-
I'm still
it's
waiting
Good
on
Friday,
numbers,
so
yeah,
end
so
of-
you're just
end of
getting a
day.
bunch of rough numbers, so cause I've got contracts and stuff like that that are up, that are ending this year, so I'm trying to get new updated terms. Yes, I am working.
Okay, all right, the why.
So, I mean, again, like, this is the first time I've been asked to participate in the interview board, and I've always been interested on that other side. So as a department head, we come in, we get asked questions, and then it's like, go away, and I don't know what happens on the back end. So it's interesting to me to be able to see what the board actually discusses and all the different departments and all that other stuff. But the main reason is, like I said, I mean, it goes back to my experiences. I oversee the second largest budget. And so for me, it's like when I got thrown into this, it's like figure it out. So this is an opportunity for me to learn more, right? So being on a board, I mean, the best way to learn is to teach, right? So it helps me see what you guys are wanting, the questions that are asked on the board, besides just asking me questions, and sees what other departments are doing, and hopefully, like I said, it makes our budgeting process as a department head or sheriff, and I can help the elected side on that and become better, and yeah, that's my main interest.
Okay. And I think, I know this isn't part of this question, but I think you would have dual role here. I mean, you would be the department head, you're presenting your jail budget.
Right.
At the same time, trying to oversee all departments' budgets to help balance and you think that you would have you would be able to manage?
Yeah.
that?
No, I like with budgeting on my end, at least, again, this is my perspective on this. I mean, you guys can obviously tell me I'm wrong, but I've been doing my budget long enough to where it's just, I kind of already know it's pretty quick. I can just, all I gotta do is just enter the information, do my inventories and so on and so on. But I've got my budgeting down. I start planning my budget in like April. So next year.
Yeah.
This year, it's just waiting on numbers is the main thing for me. Reason why I haven't got mine, because usually I want it pretty quick if I get my numbers.
Yeah.
Every year, so no, I don't find it to be a problem.
So I guess I had a follow-up question on that. I guess I'm, you know, as you know, commissioners don't really deal directly with department heads, and so I don't know what the internal politics of Grand County is different departments is. But I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on, like, are there, you know, is there, you know, one thing that comes up is we typically get a lot of position requests each year, and typically we don't grant all of them. We'll try to prioritize. So there's, you know, one could imagine that there's, you know, competition or conflicts of interest, you know, between different departments, you know, who's going to get, you know, a limited number of additional employees. Do you have thoughts on those issues, anything related to that? It's an open-ended question.
I mean, my thing is, yes, so I come in with my budget, I have certain requests or needs or whatever it is, and the sheriff's office is gonna be the same. Obviously, I work for the sheriff, but this is an advisory board, so, I mean, I would just have to separate myself and you listen to the needs. I mean, it's about prioritization, like, I mean, I remember having conversations about the needs assessments, right, in the past that we've done, you know, and a lot of people think like, well, it's the sheriff's office, I just want the sheriff's office, and I've said, no, like, look, it's, look at maintenance, look at this, like, you need to do a priority list, and what's priority? It's not just about my department needs, yes, it's important, I am the department head, and I need to run that department. But there are other departments that have more priority on their needs, like staffing or whatever else it is, so it's just, I'm gonna have to separate that out and listen to what their needs are and take my needs and weigh them. And as a board, we can do a decision, so that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
It was a big question, so sorry.
Yeah.
It
But,
almost.
Yeah, it's just, basically, I mean, I wouldn't plan on, if I was selected to be on the board, I would just be in Switzerland.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be fair, when you show up for your budget advisory board for the jail, you are the proponent for your budget, you get to sell the budget, and when you were sitting on the budget advisory board, you kind of put a different hat on, and you put it a little differently, or you're now kind of just looking at it from.
Right, and I'm gonna address my wants or my needs the same way I would if I didn't listen to everybody else's, right? I'm not gonna use that to my advantage to come in and be like, well, I just listened to so-and-so, tell me what their needs are. Well, I'm gonna one up this person and be like, oh, this. I mean, if I have a need, I'm gonna articulate it the best way I can for that need and and you guys make the decision on it. And that's what I do every year, so.
So I think,
Another call?
no, go ahead.
I like questions.
So, this one. So you know, based on my past years of experience on the budget advisory board, I think there is a kind of low level tension between department heads who wanna, you know, not spend all their time crafting a budget and not get caught in some, you know, not end up with too little money. And then people on this board, maybe especially the, you know, the finance director or others, kind of, you know, saying we need more specificity here. AJ's, you know, comment about disliking round numbers and wanting precision. Even. So I'm just curious, you know, my recollection is, you know, the jail budgets have been kind of a little more detailed than other departments, but I can also understand the point of view of a department head who, you know, it just seems like a lot of busy work that doesn't have an effect on what actually gets spent. So how do you view, like, you know, we don't want to make the budgeting process too cumbersome, but we don't want to, you know, waste money, spend too much either. What are your thoughts on how to balance that?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, because when I came on, and I'm not here to, like, I think Steve and everybody, all the past administrators did a fantastic job. But I think it is important for transparency, right? And from my experience watching commissions or being part of the advisory board, that's why I said it, like, I put a little bit more detail in just these certain, you don't have to do every line, right? I mean, there's certain things that are just like my food budget. Like, I don't need to put a description of how many meals I served for that year. Plus, I'm trying to think about how many meals I'm serving for this, or the cost of meat went up by this, or so on. Like, it's usually, I just go back and you say this, and this is where my average is. And I'm just gonna try and base it off of this. It looks like inflation's gone up, so I try to account for that. But certain things like your inventory budget, your miscellaneous items, I don't think it's hard for a department head to be able to add specific details. Like, for instance, my 400, I buy inmate clothing, toothpaste, like hygiene items, stuff like that, just miscellaneous supplies. So what I do is I create an itemized list and I say, okay, this is how much I'm gonna do. I realistically have no way to predict how many toothbrushes somebody's gonna flush in a toilet or rip up a uniform. Or, so I try to do the best that I can, but I give the commission and the advisory board, like, look, this is the cost. This is what I'm planning on, because this is the average that I went through. I don't think it's that hard. It's just inventory and you just do the best you can. So I don't think it's a big ask to ask a department head to take the time. Because like I said, I mean, I manage the second largest budget, and I can always do better, but it doesn't take me that long to just add a narrative or create an itemized list of this is what I did. Because realistically, I do it once and then I just edit it throughout the year. It's not that, I don't find it that time consuming. So when people say I don't have time to do that, I'll just keep my comments to myself.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Shan, that's interesting how you were kind of even answering the next question that's on the list, which was describe some important aspects or considerations in managing a budget. I mean, you already did like how many toilets are, or how many toothbrushes will be flushed down the toilet.
Well, you're right, and you don't know, but I think the most important thing that any department head or county government or anything, it's not your money. Right? It's not, it's the taxpayers' dollars, so you should just be responsible and be wise of what you're spending. Like, you need to be able to run your department. I mean, we have to provide a service for the county, and cost of everything goes up. But you still need to be, mindful that this is not your money. And you need to spend it appropriately where it needs. So if I don't need some cool gee whiz thing that might make my job easier, I can do it the old way, and it creates a little bit more work, but it doesn't cost the taxpayer more in time and service. They've been able to do it this way for a long time. Then I should just probably do that. You know what I mean? It's be mindful what you're spending. And and AJ, you made a good point about being more specific, but I would counter that to where some things as a department head, you can't always be specific. You can't. So like from my experience in dealing with budgets, that's why there's those round numbers. I've dealt with clerk auditors, budget advisories, or budget, what managers, whatever they were called, they oversaw the budget. And they've always gave the advice, like, look, like you can be specific to a point, but everything goes up. So like, for instance, I'm dealing with these contracts. So I get a proposal for this year. And an invoice for one thing, and I can't get the next year's cost until I get that next year's proposal. So it's $2,900 this year, and if I have to just do the best I can to track and say, okay, well, it's gone up every year, it's probably gonna go up next year, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
So I have to try and budget the best I can accordingly, so it's not always just fine. It's like specific, like what's the phone bill gonna be like? It's not that easy. I can't always just do that. I mean, I think it's important to try and do it to the best of your ability. But some of those numbers are rounded up for a reason, because otherwise I'm coming back to the commission and saying, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you give me more money? I need to amend the budget because of this. So I think it's important you can go up a little bit if you need to account for that inflation. Just don't be irresponsible or waste people's money. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, those are great answers. Let's go to this last one, and all department heads are facing this, but let's just talk a minute how you plan to prepare for any really known exceptions going into the new year. And I know you've got one. Like you showed me one. You can be specific or you can just speak generally, but let's just assume next year, your costs are going up, and you've got some projects that you need, and they're gonna cost some money above and beyond what you're normally used to. How would you go into the budget advisory board and prepare for that conversation?
So, I mean, from my experience in the budget advisory board or working with the clerk auditor's office, it's usually, hey, we're here. This is what Gabe said earlier, like, this is revenue, this is expense. We need to go back down, which I agree with. So any department head should follow the advice of what the person is that's tracking all the money. So if I have a project that's coming up that I'm planning for, what I would do is essentially try and cut where I can to make it easier on the commissioner, the advisory board, or the taxpayer, right? Because it's ultimately about the taxpayer. A less of a burden, right? So that's my issue, is like I run a building that houses people. I can't just not feed them, right? Or I can't provide clothing, or I can't do other things. But if there's, okay, I talked to the other department or IT, okay, are these computers gonna last for another year? Or do I need these, or do I have cups, or do I have certain things that I can forego? And that's why it's important to do inventory, is to see where you're at with supplies and manage your just throughout the year to see where you're at. So that way, when you have a roof that's leaking, you try and cut where you can to try and make it work. And if you can't do that, again, like I said, I house humans. You try to find other means to try and come up with money. grants or anything else to try and cut costs. Or at the end of the day, you just, I remember duct taping plastic garbage sacks to the ceiling when it was leaking in dispatch. And we had it just run into the trash can.
Okay, it's the same question, but now put on your different hat. You are not the jail commander, you are the budget advisory board. Some department head needs a new roof.
Mhm.
How would you prepare for that conversation now as a budget advisory board member?
Again, I would essentially the same thing. I would say, well, what's your priorities? What do you need for that year? And does this new roof need to happen like now? It needs to happen, right? It's priority. Okay, what on your list is not necessarily critical or priority? And have you sought other funding options to try and pay for that? And try and do that. And at the end of the day, if it needs to happen, and you can't cut costs because you still have to operate, right? And you've done everything possible, then
And it's
you have to ask for money, right? At the end of the day, you have to ask for money. I need a new roof. And so I've done everything possible as a department head, and I think we as an advisory board should rely on the advice of the department head. There's a reason why they're department heads.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are dealing with all of this. They have the internal workers or the internal workings of everything. They know what's going on. And I think if they've gone out of their way to try and cut costs or find other funding, and they have not been successful, us as an advisory board then needs to take that into consideration as a priority, right? So I'm gonna take that priority now and weigh it to everybody else's priorities and say, okay, what's critical? Just kind of like what you guys did the other day with the commission, you guys, is what's critical and what's not.
Well, all right, last question. Anything that you would like to just share that hasn't been asked?
I actually enjoy doing budgets, which is weird. I find it fascinating. I love doing the inventory aspects. I love doing that stuff. It's, I've always been interested, like I said, on the inner workings. I enjoy helping the sheriff's office because we have to deal with all different aspects of budgeting. We have a lot of grants, we have a lot of the, and so on. And I think I can bring a lot of experience just dealing with the inter-county workings, because I've been doing this for a while,
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I've helped oversee some of the largest budgets in the county. I've had to make adjustments, I've had to make sacrifices, and I've had to come in here and just, I can't, you like it or you don't.
Yeah.
And so I think I would be good on the advisory board, but that's for you guys to decide. But I'm willing to.
All right, any other follow-ups?
Very thorough.
Was it?
Yeah, very
Thank you.
thorough.
Thank you, Chancey. All right, we'll let you go, and actually I did get the email from Tammy, so we'll let you go, and, or I mean, I guess. Since we have an email, should we put this on the open and public part of this session?
Yep.
Okay,
Bears.
should we allow Jen to go?
You can give him the option.
What, so you have the option to stay?
Tammy would be great at it as well. Whoever you pick is whoever you pick.
Glad you're interested.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Jen.
for coming up and.
No problem. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just a quick comment that Gabe and I are also in the same boat of having a budget as well as being on the board.
Okay, well, let's just, I'll read and answer what I'm seeing here. Yes, she's okay with the time commitment. Describe relevant skills, training, or experience in finance.
Blow that up any at all, Steve, or?
Yeah, let's see. Let me move this, copy this, and I'll do this in email, but so let me just put it over here in the Word document that I had open. This one, I'll copy and paste it right here. Is that a little bit better?
Yep, that's better.
All right. So her answer to relevant skills, training, or experience in finance, budgeting, or accounting. Primarily my experience as department head of the airport, and I've participated in the Grand County budgeting process 4 times. And I will have to say, in my first experience working with her at the airport, she has a pretty wide budget with a lot of moving parts that I remember. Okay, why are you interested in serving on the board? I think it is important for department heads to take part in the process to gain a perspective from the other side of the budget process. It's easy to create a single budget for a department from the asking end, but very different when you have to help decide for the big picture of the whole county. What are some of the important aspects and considerations in managing a budget for the county government? Staying within the budget and following proper procedures. The open-ended question about raising costs or the proverbial need to replace the roof. What should she do to plan and prepare for this? Strong justifications and specifics of the project, look for possible savings with new vendors and contractors. And worst case scenario areas where that could possibly take cuts. Anything else you'd like to share? I don't know if I have much to share other than having been or having a good deal of experience working for the county and knowing how things have been done previously. Okay, but you guys all know Tammy, right? Yeah. Okay, well now, a procedural question. Now that we've done this, do we decide now or do we take time to think about it or how does it work?
Normally you would vote at this meeting to forward a recommendation to the commission.
Okay,
Then you need two votes. You need one for your citizen appointment and a separate one for your department.
okay, well, let me throw out we have,
Right?
no,
Yeah, yeah, that's.
Does that need to be on the agenda?
Maybe it's implicit with the
I
interviews.
I think so. I think most of the boards have been doing it just as part of their interview process. That there's a vote
it's just a vote.
because it's listed as an action item, so you can take action on the agenda.
Okay. Well, we have one citizen representative, so this vote should be pretty easy, right?
Yeah, and I would just say, you know, I look forward, I'm really grateful for AJ for expressing his interest, especially with someone with his background. And I guess I'm just really looking forward to offering him a really engaging experience and worthwhile experience, such that we can promote greater interest at the next interval where we're, you know, pursuing applicants, and so folks can see that this is a really interesting way to get involved in the budget. So with that, I would move to forward a recommendation to appoint AJ Throgmorton as the at-large citizen representative on the Budget Advisory Board.
I'll second it.
And we just vote?
Yeah, you're gonna call for them.
Okay, let's call for a vote. All those in favor? That's,
Well, I think
that is a
actually,
yes.
so Gabe has been the chair, I think, so far, so I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gabe
Oh,
can,
okay.
yeah, Gabe can continue as chair until you guys vote to decide who's gonna be chair.
Good point.
At your next
Yeah,
meeting.
well, he's ably standing in.
There you go.
All right. Well, good. I look forward to working.
Thank
with
you for
AJ.
calling that vote for me. It looks like the motion is passed unanimously. And then, so furthermore, I would entertain a motion to or I guess the next opening to appoint would be for the department head. Is there anyone that'd like to make a motion to that effect?
Actually, before we do that, is there an opportunity to discuss pros and cons amongst us right now, or is it?
Get a motion on the floor and then we can discuss, or
I mean, we could.
I'd like to, I mean, there's a couple high level.
I mean, you know, if we're being real sticklers for Robert's rules, we're supposed to have a motion on the floor, but that's not always observed, and I don't think it makes much difference. Whatever the chair decides.
Either way, if someone wants to jump in with discussion like Stephen, or if someone wants to jump in with a motion, either.
Well, I would like to suggest is that each person just kind of talk about pros and cons, strengths, weaknesses of each of the candidates and just go around once just to see if that stirs any thought in anyone's vote. I know where I'm going. Maybe I'd like to just describe pros and cons. Okay, just to jump into that.
Yeah, I'll start. I think they're both great candidates. I appreciate them both expressing interest. I would say that Shan has a little bit more experience, managing a larger share of the budget. And in my experience working with him, he is very thorough and detail oriented, and he is realistic as well. And so I think that he would be a real asset to this board.
Yeah, I would agree with Gabe's assessment there. I sit on the airport board, so. You know, there's a little bit of, what would you say, camaraderie or respect for Tammy for the position that she's been in, but it does appear that there's a lot more experience in Mr. Ackwell's position.
My comments are similar. I think both would be good on, I'd be happy with either Tammy or Shan on the board. I think they've both been with the county a number of years and have experience. I think Shan has a little bit more experience and, you know, every department's unique, but I think maybe the jail's a little bit closer to the typical department than the airport is. So, yeah, I have positive things to say about both candidates, but I think Shan has maybe a little bit more about the experience.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to what other people said.
Okay. Well, I'll just throw mine out there. I think, actually, I like both candidates, but I'm personally a little concerned about, the potential conflict in the sheriff's office and the sheriff in the jail of having the greatest percentage of the budget. And there might be a bias there, but I believe, as any department head would have to wear the two hats as I described it, their own personal budget. And when he came in to do that, I would say you sell it. But when you're the budget advisory board, you are, you know, you're thinking overall for all department budgets. So I'll just put that out there. So.
I think that's a good point to raise, but it is, I mean, it's a dilemma making these budget decisions because some departments have just very big complex budgets and there's only, you know, the commission is going to spend maybe 15 minutes discussing an individual department. You know, they might spend another hour or two if they're doing their homework before the meeting. You know, we might spend an hour or two, but it's hard. And I do think budgets need to be scrutinized. You know, one could say that, you know, Shan knows the sheriff's department budget. So if we want to squeeze some savings out, he's maybe in a better position to help with that than a lot of people are. I've been historically the sheriff, you know, not the jail, but the sheriff's department budget has been a little vague. And I would be happy to see more specificity in the future. And then I guess the final response to your concept, I think we're good and relevant. Yes, some of the bigger decisions about, you know, do we need to start, you know, reining in the budget of these departments or not, that tends to get made at the commission level, and I don't think this board has been primarily responsible for applying that pressure. It's either been people like in your chair, and some like you or Gabe might do some of that. The commission as a whole might do some of that. I don't think the budget advisory board collectively has been doing the sort of difficult belt tightening as opposed to just legal.
I would think that. I agree your point's valid, but I would think that the balance here would. Clearly not allow that to happen, right? I mean, even if Bill Wingfield sees a huge need because I'm on the airport board. There's 5 other people that are going to balance that out and not let me bring any special interest forward is kind of the way I would see it, whether it's myself or somebody else in that position. So I think if we're balanced out here enough with the difference that no one person is going to come in and overload a single department somewhere or anything.
Yeah, I agree that is a valid concern. I've had an pretty extensive experience working with Shan one-on-one with budgeting, and I mentioned before that he's realistic. And never have I gotten the sense that, he was, clutching his pearls on behalf of the jail or the sheriff's office, at the expense of any other department's budget, when it came time to make harder decisions. And so with that personal experience, I don't have any concerns about his professionalism in that regard.
The airport over the years has also had some really big asks as well, when they've gotten into bigger projects and so forth, so. I'm not sure I would see that particular danger being more or less so on either side of these two particular departments.
Okay, so how does this vote work?
We need somebody to make a motion.
I would entertain the motion to,
I move to recommend the appointment of Shan Hackwell to the Budget Advisory Board as the department head slot.
I'll second that. Well, either
You
one.
beat me to it.
I'm gonna leave you to do the call the name.
okay, we have a motion by Treasurer Kaufman, a second by Commissioner Winfield. Call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Great, so with that, I don't think we have anything else on our agenda to cover. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's it.
Do we want to attempt to get these recommendations on the agenda for the next meeting, or is it already written?
No, it's, the deadline's today though, so do you
Yes.
have access to, you have access to those
We
already,
will be
the
getting it on that.
recommendations,
So
yeah.
that's kind of what that was the, okay, you're already the planning to get this on this next agenda. Yeah, no delays here.
Okay.
All right, so it's,
Actually, I don't know if this is open and public too, but I would like to throw the topic out since we're here about what date and time might be the best for our weekly budget advisory meetings going forward. We'll do the first one the week of 9/2, first week of September. Isn't that appropriate topic for here or?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if we're ready to discuss schedules, I think it's appropriate as well to handle that offline as well.
Okay,
My preference is Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
that's really all I needed to hear. Phil, actually, what about you? And then I'll follow up an email to get a closer, more specific.
Yeah, I would need to look through mine. Last year, Thursday was a conflict for me and I missed several meetings, so if I could, I'd rather follow up. I'll go through my calendar and see, because I think it was a regular meeting in Price that I was either missing or.
I'll send an email to this group
Okay.
to solidify that, and I'll schedule this out for the 8 weeks, September through October.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think good.
Right, so it's 2:06 PM. I will adjourn this meeting.